Hey, this is Brian Tong from Boomer Life. I've been practicing law for 38 years, and I've had a lot of people come in and ask for wills to be done and um, have questions about how to protect my assets. And typically, what I try to do with people is to tell them how to avoid probate because, a probate lawyer is going to charge you 5% of your estate in order to handle your affairs. And for the most part, you can get a lot of it done while you're alive and avoid probate altogether. So I wrote a blog here or an ebook. Basically, it's tips based on my understanding of Florida law, which have different implications depending on the state in which you reside. And furthermore, there might be state and federal tax implications, which should be addressed by a specialist before you decide on any final actions. But these are some ideas for you to consider, discuss with your advisors and specialists, and implement some of these tools after you get some good advice. But these are some things for you to think about. So I've got this posted in my Boomer Life blog, and the first question that most people ask is, what am I going to do with my assets when I pass? And I just came to realize when I turned 60 that, geez, I'm probably not going to live forever. Who knew? So it's probably a good idea to take care of stuff like this. So they have questions like, how do I avoid being kept alive by machines so my estate isn't devoured by hospital bills? How can I avoid paying estate taxes? What do I do about debts? The average person in America retires with only $80,000 in savings. So estate planning isn't really their concern. But if you've been wise and or lucky and you have equity in your house and you have some savings, some retirement money set aside, and you're going to be getting some Social Security and you own some toys and collectibles, you may wish to have some provisions to dispose of these things before you die. Right now there's 143 million taxpayers in the U.S. And of those, only the top 1% make over $300,000 a year. And this book isn't written for those people. Those people can afford their own estate planners and lawyers and all that other stuff to take care of their stuff. This is about the rest of us. And you might say, well, I'm only 55 and I feel great. Well, you might live to be 122, which is the record right now. But if you don't, it might be a good time to now start thinking about what to do with your stuff. So what I've done is to basically talk to some people and put together an ebook here on how to avoid having all of your stuff escheat to the state, which means what happens when you die without a will and you die without beneficiaries. So we're going to talk about that. And the first thing I want to talk about is life insurance. If you hold a life insurance policy, it'll be one of two types, either term life or whole or universal life. And there may or may not be a premium return feature, and it may or may not be tied to certain funds or indices for purpose of calculating premiums. Typically, the cheapest life insurance policy is a term policy. It expires after its term by definition. So it might be a 20-year term that you buy when you're 45. And if you live past 65, all those premiums will have gone basically down the drain and you'll have nothing. Whereas a whole life policy accumulates a surrender value, has a cash value, you can borrow against it. And then at some point, a whole life policy, as you get older in age, it becomes advisable to just cash it in as opposed to continually buying it because its cash value is high enough to where it becomes its own death benefit. So obviously with any insurance, if you die while the policy is enforced, then the life insurance benefit goes directly to your beneficiary. And they don't pay tax on that money because the policy is purchased with after-tax dollars. Typically, people name their wife or children as beneficiaries of life insurance, and this is purchased basically to ease the financial burden of their death if you're the income producing member. Often term life insurance is used for this purpose, and it typically involves a lower premium with an expiration at a certain age, usually retirement age of 66 or thereabouts. So you could buy a rather large term life policy, say $500,000 for your family, and if you die unexpectedly before retirement age, they'll receive the benefit of that tax-free. With a whole life insurance policy that has a surrender value, and you can also borrow against it, but the premiums are going to be higher. Whole life policies can also be used as savings accumulation devices because they accumulate a cash value which can be accessed or borrowed on. They don't expire at the end of a certain term. Monthly or annual premiums are higher than with term, but there's the benefit of accumulating cash value or surrender value. The beneficiaries of these policies also pay no taxes upon receipt. If you really want to live forever, you could buy a life insurance policy to fund a cryonics process, which can even include funding for cash in your pocket in your next life. But that's another topic for another paper. Most of us have life insurance to provide for our families, which is designed to pay off the mortgage on the house and maybe to pay for college for the kids in the event of our untimely demise. Certainly none of us wants that event to occur. Of course, there's also disability, major medical insurance, and even nursing home payment policies available, but we're not going to get into that. According to a recent study, 44% of American households have individual life insurance policies, and 40% of those people think they don't have enough life insurance. Most people say, honestly, it's because of other more pressing obligations, which is certainly understandable. But if the choice is feed my family or buy life insurance, it's no contest. You're going to the grocery store. But if you're not in survival mode and there is some extra cash in the tank, then a relatively inexpensive term life insurance policy would pay off the mortgage on the house if you died unexpectedly, and that might not be such a bad idea. Fact is, 70% of U.S. households with children under 18 would have trouble meeting their everyday expenses if the main wage earner died for more than a couple of months. So no matter who you are, it might be a good idea to have an evaluation of your current life insurance situation. Any reputable life insurance salesperson would be thrilled to do it for you for free, for no obligation. Now, aside from life insurance, what other kind of stuff do we need to worry about? Retirement funds such as annuities, 401ks, and IRAs are typically thought of as good ways to defer taxes on your money until later in life after you retire and you're in a lower tax bracket. The problem is you'll also have less dependents and less deductions at that time. And you fund these with pre-tax dollars, and when they pay out, the amount collected is taxed as ordinary income. So if you have a plan that's supposed to pay you $5,000 a year and you're in the 50% tax bracket when you die, and there are none of those right now, but they may be coming, you're not going to get $5,000 a month when you die. You're going to get half of that. So due to the pandemic and the political factors that we've got currently existing in the U.S. in 2021, there's no telling where the top life insurance or the top tax bracket is going to be. So it might be time to take a look at where your money is via retirement funds and where it's headed. For example, a Roth IRA is a way to avoid tax. It's paid with post-tax money, and it's non-taxable to beneficiaries or to you when you cash it in. But that might require taking a lump sum, pay lump sum taxes upon conversion, and that might not be an option. So let's get to what you do to protect your stuff after you die. A living will is known as an advance personal directive, and it's a vehicle for you to prevent yourself from becoming brain dead and having your body kept alive from machines, which will accomplish nothing but add a tremendous amount of medical bills to your estate. Everybody wants to avoid this situation, That's why we have living wills. They're very simple. I've attached a copy to the blog, and it basically says in the event you suffer an injury or medical disaster like a stroke, which renders you brain dead, that you would not be kept alive by breathing machines and feeding tubes. You might remember the case of Terri Schiavo, who was a Florida woman who slipped into a coma back in 1990, which lasted 15 years. And there was a big lawsuit where her parents and her husband fought over whether or not to pull the plug. And so a living will can erase all the drama and make that a no-brainer, so to speak. You like how I did that? So what about a simple will? How do I dispose of my stuff? I'm not rich, but I got stuff like dad's war medals and baseball cards and family paintings and furniture and keepsakes, wedding rings, stuff like that. And you want them to go to the first child or whoever, to the mailman. So you can make a simple will that will send the assets in a variety of direction wherever you want them to go. You can have it typed by a lawyer. You can print it yourself. I put a copy of it in the materials here, and it pretty much tells you how to do it. Most wills that I do are him to her, her to him, we call it, which is if I go first, my wife gets everything. If she goes first, I get everything. After we both go, the kids split equally, yada, yada. So it's a very simple will. And you really don't even need it unless you have something that you want specifically to go to one person or another. So what about these retirement funds, savings accounts, IRAs, all that kind of stuff? Well, any bank account you can put POD on, called pay on death, especially like your checking account. I mean, that's one of the biggest pains in the butt when someone passes is nobody can get into their checking account because they didn't put a POD clause on it. While it doesn't allow your spouse to get into your accounts while you're alive, it does after you pass. Good thing to have. Then you don't have to have bank accounts probated and pay 5% of them to a probate lawyer. So what about your other stuff? Your 401k, your retirement accounts, you can do the same thing with them, or you put beneficiaries on them. There's also some things that these investment companies can do to warn someone if you become mentally incapacitated, early onset Alzheimer's or dementia. And so that's something that you can think about that will alert trusted family members if you seem to be repeatedly forgetting and resetting your password, for example. So what about other stuff? Hunt camp, house camp, RV, houses, boats, trains, planes, and automobiles. Anything with a title you can dispose of before your death by simply signing the title and directing in your will how you want it to go. And then after you pass, a bill of sale can be done and title can be transferred. It's easy to do. Real property is another matter. Land is held in several ways: trust, tenants in common, tenants by the entirety, joint tenants with right of survivorship, and on and on. Most realty is closed by a bank or title agent, and most real estate buyers take title via a warranty deed from the seller, which warrants that he has good title to convey. So if you are the deeded owner of real property, either jointly or by yourself, and you want to keep it out of the probate process, then you should sign a quitclaim deed changing the ownership, for example, from you and Ethel as husband and wife to you and Ethel and Sonny and Sissy as joint tenants with right of survivorship. And I've attached a copy of that to the materials as well. And there's also trusts, and that they can get very complicated: living trusts, revocable trusts. There's a million of them, and I don't do them, and you need to speak to a professional that does. You've all heard of trust babies and silver spoon kids. Lucky sperm club, people that are born to rich parents with trust funds that make them rich when they get a certain age. These are complex and should be handled by specialists in trust and tax law. What about death taxes, people ask me? Death taxes are not really a concern for most of us. As of now, the death tax exemption is 11.7 million. So if your estate is less than that, you're not going to pay death taxes. So you want to find a way to build your income working from home online as a result to increase your estate before or after you retire. Click here for a free ebook that'll show you how. Other than that, I've put a living will in the materials, a last will and testament. What else? Say power of attorney, durable power of attorney, and designation of healthcare surrogate, and a quitclaim deed for you to look at, which will help you transfer these things prior to death and alleviate the need to have an estate lawyer handle your estate. So that's it now from Brian Tong and Boomer Life. Have a good rest of your life. Let's hope it's long and prosperous. See you later.